Hello, hello. So, welcome to all of my listeners today. I am going to be talking about harassment in the workplace. Hey, memes. Today I'm talking about harassment in the workplace. It is major going on in organizations right now. Even when we do not believe we are being harassed, trust me when I tell you, if it gives you a funny feeling, you're definitely being harassed. I'm going to be going live, and he'll be joining me shortly to jump in on this topic as well. And I just want to give him a moment. There you are. Hey.
What's up? What's up?
So I was just telling my audience that I'm talking about harassment in the workplace. And today you will be covering fear. Yes?
Deer fear to be exact.
There you go. There you go. So I want you to go ahead and start us off. Because I wanna have an understanding about what deer fear is before we even start talking about it. I don't want to chime in on something I don't know, you know?
Okay, so let's look at it from this standpoint. When I say deer fear, like literally think of the animal, a deer. When you see a deer on the side of the road, well, usually that's because it saw something and it froze, it got afraid. So deer fear is a syndrome that us as humans actually have sometimes. We freeze because of a situation, or we see something and we don't even know what to do. We don't move forward, or we don't even backtrack. We just stay still right there where we at. And so deer fear affects us in many different types of ways, either from being scared, or even when we're in a comfort zone, we get deer fear because we are so used to being comfortable that we don't even want to actually come out of this place to see what could actually be further or better. And we have deer fear, and we like, well, I know where I came from and I know what I've been through, so I don't want to. So that's what deer fear is all about.
Wow. Well, that really resonates with the topic that I have chosen for this evening, which is harassment. Because as soon as you said it and explained what it meant, I immediately identified with it. And when I say immediately, a lot of us don't realize that we have experienced some form of harassment, whether male or female. You have experienced it in the workplace. And harassment is a form of employment discrimination that affects you from ADA, um, the age discrimination as well, and Title VII of your Civil Rights Act. So harassment is unwelcome conduct based on race, religion, age, sex, national origin, I mentioned religion, disability, genetic impairments, up to and including even pregnancy or gender identity. So it becomes unlawful when it is used against you as a condition of employment. So even if a manager makes comments about you like petty slights, or they annoy you, or they're isolated incidences of them saying something to you, it doesn't make it illegal. What makes it illegal is when it is downright offensive. So that can be by way of offensive jokes, anything that someone will say that's like a slur, whether it's a racial slur, a sexual slur, or even a comment just about age. Those are all forms of harassment. And most of us know when it's happening, but we just have that deer fear, like you mentioned. Because when it first happened to me, I was very young in the workplace. And I remember it very clearly. I was probably 14 years old. And I was harassed in the workplace by my manager only because I asked for additional hours. They wanted to talk to me abusive and then said things to me of a sexual nature that are not permitted in the workplace. And all I could think to myself is, oh my gosh, what do I do? Like, I don't even know who to go to at that age. All I knew was they said it. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm a big girl. I'm working my own job. I'm going to my job after school. The last thing I want to do is tell my parents, because when I do, oh, immediately I'm going to be told to quit the job. And that was exactly what I was afraid of. So I said, I can't do that because then I won't have any extra spending money, because I had to have the new Gucci bag and all of the fancy things I was buying back then. So I couldn't understand, like, all right, maybe I really should tell someone. And I'm here to tell everyone, please, please tell someone. So no matter who did it, go to the next person above them. No matter who it is, go to the person above them. So if it's your coworker, go to your manager. But before you do any of that, there's a major statement that must be made. And that statement is very simple. I don't feel comfortable with what you said to me. Please do not speak to me that way again. That's it. When you say that, if it goes beyond that, it's time to start reporting. That's it. Do not allow any additional space for them to say things, do things. And it goes so deep as even to say, in the workplace, if someone just simply walks in front of you like this and they keep moving in front of you and they're blocking you from getting to where you're trying to go in the office, that's harassment. That is harassment. It is not something that's permissible. If they intimidate you even, you run the risk that when you report it, that once it's investigated, you may feel like you're going to be retaliated against. What happens then? So this is the reason we have Dear Fear. So Vic, I'd like you to go ahead and chime in at this time and tell us a little bit more about that.
So the way that really works is like you actually, we're going to use your scenario, your real life situation, because that's the best way we actually can apply this, because you said it. I didn't want to do something else. You froze.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, I don't. And here's the thing. We do it either mentally or we do it physically. And that's the thing where, we haven't really used this term Dear Fear that often, because when we think of Dear Fear, we don't actually, the first thing that we think about is an animal, but we don't think about how Dear Fear affects us. Where, oh man, am I in a position where I'm just freezing and I'm not doing anything because I'm afraid? Oh, I don't know how this, as you said, I don't know how this is going to affect something else that I'm trying to do. So we freeze. We don't do anything. And so what'll tend to happen is we'll find ourselves in a position where you don't necessarily, like a deer, get killed, but something in you dies. Your spirit might die, right? Your will might die. Your confidence might die. And so we have to be very mindful about Dear Fear, because we don't want to die in a different category in our life. We don't want to have that Dear Fear affect us in a way where we're not doing anything. We're not actually looking to see how we can move forward. And here's the thing. If we look at Dear Fear and saying, oh, I really need to move cautiously. I need to be very, very careful about my next steps. Because when we look at it from that standpoint, oh, now something is coming towards me and I don't know what it is and I don't know how to handle it. I'm not going to sit here, but I am going to take my next steps very cautiously. Because as you said in your situation, you're like, oh, well, what do? I don't know what I should do. I'm going to do something small so I can take a step forward.
Right.
So I don't stand here and so I don't get hit. Because there's something that is coming towards me and I don't know what it is going to do to me. So I got to move cautiously, just as if I was driving on the highway. I'm going to yield. I'm not going to just sit there. I'm going to yield. I'm going to be very cautious as I'm moving forward. So when we look at dare fear as something that is going to help us to say, let me take a preventative measure. And so even sometimes we get affected by dare fear by the fact that we don't actually even say, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to move back. And the reason that sometimes you may need to move back, because maybe you went out there and you didn't know what to do and you was being presumptuous. So instead of moving forward, you don't know what's ahead of you, but you already do know what's behind you. And guess what? Comfort zone is behind us. So we might need to backtrack a little bit so we can feel safe. Right. Oh, I was moving forward a little bit. I saw something coming to me. I got scared. Let me take a couple steps back a little bit.
Yep.
Let me back up so I can reassess, so I can move forward and proceed with caution. So when we look at it from that standpoint, that really helps us. It helps us in so many different ways, but the most important way that it really helps us is because it helps us to show that we're showing ourselves the attention and the love that we need to give ourselves.
Right.
It is putting us in a position to say, how am I loving me? Because I'm now being cautious and I'm being very watchful of dare fear and saying, oh, because I love me this much, I'm going to move forward. Oh, because I love me this much, I'm going to take a step back. But what I'm not going to do is sit still and be right here and now be attacked or have something come towards me that I don't know what is going to happen, and I die mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, economically. Dare fear can kill you in a category of your life that you don't want it to happen to. And so when we look at it, a lot of times we be affected by dare fear as children. Because as a child, when you get reprimanded, and somebody that is in a position of authority, this is where the psychological come in at. Well, now I don't know what to do next. I don't know how to move forward because I'm affected by this dare fear. I done got reprimanded. And so now somebody in a position of authority, they did something to me and I don't know how to move forward. So when I become an adult and somebody who's in a position of authority now comes to me, the first thing is triggered is my dare fear and I don't move forward. Because last time I came across somebody in a position of authority, they reprimanded me and it made me freeze.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we get out of dare fear? That's the next thing that we're going to talk about. But that's how we can actually look at it, Marcy. And I like that point that you actually brought in from your real life experience.
Yes, yes. And it's really tough because, as you can imagine, at the age of 14, being harassed in the workplace, you're a child, so you have no idea what to really do. And I didn't make my disclaimer statement like I just gave you guys a minute ago, where I said, I don't really feel comfortable with what you're saying. I think you should stop saying that to me. I didn't use anything like that. I basically, I stood there. I literally froze like a deer in headlights. Like, wow, what do I do? And no one said that the harasser could be my supervisor. It could be my coworker. It could be a supervisor on a whole nother department, or it could be a non-employee. Because I was in the service industry, it could have been a customer that came in that did it. And there's nothing that I would have been able to do about it if I just stood there in deer fear. So here's the thing. When you're harassed, if someone else sees it as well, but you're feeling kind of stuck and you're frozen, literally where you stand when it happens, the first thing you want to do, if you have that dear fear, is to look at that individual and say, did you hear that? Or did you see that? If it was something they did. If it was something they said, you ask them if they heard it. If they say yes, ask them to document it on paper for you. Because guess what? Now you have a witness. And that's major. A witness helps you feel comfortable, as does going to a supervisor and reporting the incident. But wait, here's the problem. This harassment can happen and it can cause economic injury. It can cause you to be terminated. And now you're very fearful. But the one thing I'm here to tell you is, while it's a scary situation, it is your responsibility to report it. It is not going to stop just because you tell them to stop. In many cases, it does not stop. It just doesn't. For me, it did not stop. So I actually had to go a lot further than the fact that my manager had said something inappropriate to me. He then started to mistreat me. He then started to take hours away. Now, granted, I'm 14 years old. I just want to get a new Gucci bag every paycheck. That's really all I wanted. I didn't want anything else. Imagine if I was the full-time employee that relied on that paycheck, though. If I'm the full-time employee, how would I now afford to feed my family? How could I pay bills? How could I do anything if you're now holding that over me like you better not tell? It's horrible. So now I'm so afraid that I don't even feel like I want to work anymore. I'm sick, physically and mentally sick. And prevention is always the best tool for harassment. So you want to take the steps to help prevent it from happening in the first place. But know that when it's unwelcome, it's not something that you did. You could just be a friendly individual. I worked in customer service, so everybody on the phone was my friend. Everybody. Until they started to ask, hey, so are you married? I'm sorry, that's not appropriate. Please don't ask me questions about my personal life. And that is exactly how I had to slow it down when I was working in customer service. But the best rule of thumb, as I mentioned, is to make sure you report it, and make sure if anybody witnessed it, that they can write it down for you. Because when it's time to really have the conversation, you may actually be in the room with the person that did it to you. And you're going to have to stand up to it. Because if you don't stand up now, this is a pattern that can continue through life in general. Like you mentioned, Vic, if something happened to you as a child, how do you now pick up as an adult years later if it happened to you and prevent it? Like, what exactly do you do at that point? And that's why I always counsel all of my clients that if something doesn't feel right, it's more than likely not right. There's no reason to even think about if it's right. If it just didn't feel right within you, like someone is walking outside with you every day after work, that's fine. We work together. That's okay. But as I'm working later, you're staying later. Before you know it, this person is having conversations with you that may be inappropriate. It could be anything. Report it. You need to document everything that happens. Make sure you have witnesses. Yes, Kiara, report. Make sure you report it and make sure you have witnesses. But the employer is liable for this harassment. So the one thing you want to make sure you do is make sure when you talk to your supervisor above, whoever did it, that you also loop HR in. When you tell human resources that you were harassed, immediately there will be an investigation. So when I say be prepared, be very prepared, because you're going to have to sit down and have a conversation. And once it's all seemed to be resolved, it can be great. But here's the caveat. If it's not, and it's to the point where you feel like, I don't think I can do this job anymore, it's now time to go ahead and start looking for a new job. While you're looking for a new job, don't forget to visit your local EEOC office, because you have 180 days from the day it happens to go ahead and report it to the EEOC. No matter what the outcome was, you have 180 days to report it. So once you report it, and the sooner the better, the quicker it's going to be resolved. Or they think it's resolved. So let's just say it took a week and they come back and the person has to take some kind of harassment training and that sort of thing. That's fine. They take their training, they come back to work, but guess what? They're back at it again. Now it's not just you. It's your neighbor in a cubicle next to you. And she comes to you and she says, did you hear what he just said to me? Or he says to you, did you notice that she said something to me that was kind of off, and if it doesn't make you feel good, that means it's not good. So when that happens, now you've got another case. You have 180 days from the day they come back and tell you what their findings are. File it with the EEOC. If you're uneasy and it just doesn't seem resolved, file it. And you do have time. So you can wait up until 160 days and say, I'm going to go ahead and file because this isn't being rectified. They cannot retaliate against you. They cannot terminate you even if you went to the EEOC because that's illegal. So Vic, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about more of this deer fear.
So how do we actually not allow the deer fear to affect us in a way where we get hit by that Mack truck and we land on the side of the road, either mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, economically? Well, one, we have to acknowledge it. You can't do anything without actually acknowledging something. That's as if I'm going to look for your help, but I didn't acknowledge your presence. It's not possible. You're not going to help me because I didn't acknowledge you. So the moment that we start acknowledging that this actually can happen, we have to look at scenarios. Okay, as you said earlier, be prepared for a certain outcome. Again, proceed with caution.
Right.
So this is the first step that we actually want to take to overcome the deer fear, is by saying, okay, this is what could happen because I know how I am. And this is how I say, this is why I said earlier, is wrapped into your loving yourself. Because part of loving yourself, you have to acknowledge who you are. You have to acknowledge yourself. You have to acknowledge what you are capable of, what you don't do, what happens to you. And so we know certain things make us respond a certain way. So that's the next thing that we want to do. We want to actually sit down and take the time to evaluate ourselves. You know, I'm very, very big on self-assessments. So do some self-assessments. Do these tests because it is going to really help you to say, okay, have I learned who I am? This is how I'm going to overcome the deer fear because I am learning who I am. And by me learning who I am, it is helping me to evaluate myself. Yes. So that is very, very important. So now how do we actually take where we are, say we're looking at this problem or this obstacle is coming right to us, and we are affected by this deer fear where we froze. Well, we need to now mentally say, hey, I gotta move. Hey, I gotta move. Hey, I gotta move. You gotta move forward or you need to move back. You need to move forward or you need to move back. And why do I say you need to move forward or move back? Because if you stay right there, you are going to get hit.
Yeah.
Just like a deer, they stay right there and they get hit. I don't want you to get hit. I want you to acknowledge the deer fear, evaluate yourself, and then move forward. And the reason it is going to be, you're going to be capable of moving forward because you have taken the time before something happened. Don't wait until a problem comes to start preparing for problems. I made a quote about it a while back. I said, most people's problem is they prepare for emergency when it's an emergency.
Right.
No, you can't. You have to prepare for an emergency in advance. We've spoke about it before. When we were younger, they made us do fire drills. It was no fire. But when a fire did break out, guess what? You fall back on what you know, not what you don't know.
Right.
So by us actually preparing ourselves and saying, okay, I know this about me. I know these certain triggers about me. This is what I'm going to do. Or well, what scenario can possibly come up? What types of things could actually happen? So the next step, visualization. The reason that visualization is necessary because visualization helps us to put ourselves in a scenario mentally. Mm-hmm. And when you put yourself in the scenario mentally, this is the beautiful thing about it. Your brain does not know the difference between physical reality and a subconscious thought. This is why when you are sleeping and you're in a dream, you cry in your dream, and guess what? While you're laying on the bed, you are in tears because your body does not know the difference between the two.
Right.
So when we start using visualization and coupling that with what we know about ourselves, it helps us to say, if I'm in this scenario, what would I possibly do? Like, really think about that. Have you ever sat and thought about somebody that you love and something happening to them and you start crying because you are literally in the thought of something happening to them? Well, see, what that happens is your brain just triggers something in your body, because even though it didn't actually happen, guess what? Your body is feeling that emotion. Guess what? Emotions is just energy in motion.
Yeah.
And so now when we look at it from that standpoint, we didn't now said, okay, I didn't did the visualization. I didn't felt how my body is going to respond. And this is why it's very, very important for us to do this. Because when we do this, we actually put ourselves in a position of saying, oh, that felt off. That felt good. Oh, that made me kind of have deer fear where I froze just thinking about it. So what would you do if you were in a real life situation? You just created a simulation in your mind and your body responded to that simulation. It is no different. So that's how we actually get out of dear fear affecting us, because we didn't visualize it. We didn't analyze ourselves. We didn't actually learn certain things about ourselves. And we now prepared ourselves to move forward or to move back.
Right.
And so the very things that we are preparing ourselves for is what is going to help us when that actual scenario possibly does happen. This is why even as kids, you have adults teaching their children, oh, what do you do if somebody comes to you? Stranger danger, stranger danger.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? When a stranger actually did pop up to them, they knew exactly what to do.
Absolutely.
They fell back on what they knew, not what they didn't know. So we can do the same thing for ourselves. Learn ourselves, learn our triggers, evaluate ourselves. And as you said, if it's a situation of a harassment, you have to say, well, if somebody did say this to me, how would I respond?
Right.
Oh, what would I do? How could I? And so one of the things that we have to understand is how we are as adults is really just a connection to how we was as children. So once we look at it from that standpoint, now it helps us to say, oh, you know what? I know what I did or didn't do when I was a kid. And that's why I am the way I am as an adult. So that is going to help us to actually be more prepared in actually evaluating dear fear, DEER fear, and not DEAR fear. So we got to know the difference. And we got to actually do these steps is actually going to help us to love ourselves. And so these are some of the techniques that I actually share with my clients. So, I wanted to share that with you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And for everyone that just joined us within the past few minutes, Career Coach Marcy, this is Mr. Mindful Minute, and we're talking harassment and dear fear. And I just wanted to make sure I mentioned to you, although it hasn't happened to you, maybe, you may have seen it. I do make sure that everyone has access to the EEOC information, and that is the United States Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They will help you when you feel that you've been harassed, whether it's regular harassment, it's sexual harassment, and the two are very different. They also assist you if you feel that you've been retaliated against or anything of that nature as well. And I'd like to make sure that you guys get the information so you can reach them at EEOC.gov. Even if you have questions, I would say go to their website, type in the question, and make sure that you actually provide them the information so they. And with that, they also have a toll-free number, and it's 1-800-669-4000. So that's 1-800-669-4000. The EEOC is here to help you, no matter what work experience you may have had. If it does not feel good, it is not good. And I just wanted to make sure I close with that. So, Mr. Mindful Minute, go ahead and share with them, how can they find you?
So there's a couple of different ways you can actually connect with me. One is on Instagram, Mr. Mindful Minute, all one word. You can Google me. Go to Mr. Mindful Minute and Google that. My business actually will pop up under Go Be Great LLC. You can check out my podcast, the Mr. Mindful Minute podcast, touching on personal development. You can go to my website. So it's so many different. Facebook. It's actually all one. It's synonymous on every platform you could think of. Mr. Mindful Minute on everything. If you actually are on Facebook or Instagram, you could just click the link in my bio and you could get a free 15-minute affirmation strategy call. And what you're going to get is you're going to get some affirmations. We're going to go over some affirmations that is going to be effective in a certain category of your life. Because not only do I teach self-love, but I also teach the power of affirmations in my 12-week coaching course, Mindset of Greatness. So if you want to get some free tidbits, you can get that free 15 minutes. And if you want to work with me, we can rock. I'm here for you on this journey. Those are definitely some different ways that you can get in contact. So that's it.
All right. So I would like to tell you a little bit about who I am and what I do. I'm Career Coach Marcy, and I offer career services to anyone who is seeking employment, who has been laid off, reduced in the workforce, or even looking to transition their career. I offer everything from resumes to cover letters to salary negotiation, mock interviews. I also have an ebook of 100 interview questions that is available for purchase on my website. I also offer social media cleanup, LinkedIn optimization, and just a few other things. I can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and on TikTok as Career Coach Marcy. And my website is careercoachmarcy.squarespace.net. And lastly, I offer free resume review where I will review your resume for you and give you suggestions of changes that you can make so that you can update your resume so that it makes it through the application tracking system. And lastly, I also offer 1 hour of complimentary career coaching to all new clients. So again, be sure to check out Career Coach Marcy and Mr. Mindful Minute. Every Thursday at 6 p.m., we are live here on Instagram. I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure to see everyone. I see you out there, Career Coach Kim. Thank you so much. Melly Mel, I see you. And I appreciate you, Coach Kiera, and everyone else who joined us. And Vic, let's do this again next week. So we've got another hot topic next week. Don't forget to join us. Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a great evening, Vic.
Have a good one.